Hello and welcome to the third tutorial in the fourth series on drawing the full figure. In the previous tutorials, we had a look at the basic structure of the full figure in a couple of frontal stances and how to draw feet. In this and the following tutorials, we will expand on those stances and learn to clothe the figure. But before we do that, we're going to have a brief look at some theological aspects of the icon and what they mean for how we draw and paint icons. The icon has two elements, the form of the person depicted and the artistic stylistic element. This includes the measurements of the figures, the colours used, and the way that colour is built up, amongst other things. When most people think of icons, they usually think of the image of Christ or the saints or event depicted on a wooden panel or perhaps a mural. But this is not the actual icon, in Greek ikona. It is a depiction of the icon that is crafted using different techniques, materials and styles, what S4T3 the Great calls an ikonisma. The icon, according to the Church Fathers and ecumenical councils, is the form of the hypostasis or person, that is, their physical characteristics, and it exists whether or not it has been depicted by artistic means. This form cannot change because each individual person is unique. Christ was a specific person with specific characteristics, which is why when we see an icon of Christ or a saint, we immediately recognize who it is, and that recognizability is extremely important. These forms, icons, are what have been passed on by tradition and belong to the Church. If we look at icons of Christ throughout the ages, they are immediately recognizable even if the artistic style varies. This is also the reason why it is wrong to depict Christ or the Theotokos as black, Chinese, or Native American, for example, because they were specific persons of a specific race. They are not some kind of general idea of humanity. Human nature is found in specific hypostases. Icons have elements that are fixed and cannot be altered, and others that are variable, and it is important to distinguish between the two. Let's take the example of the icon of Christ that we're going to draw in this tutorial. The most important fixed element is the form, the physical characteristics of Christ. It must also bear his name. The form and the name are what constitute the icon, according to the Fathers. It is like a modern identity card that bears a person's photograph and name to identify them. Then there are certain peripheral, conventional elements that are added to the form that are also fixed. In the case of Christ, these are the ancient Greek garments he's wearing, the Gospel book, his hand in the blessing gesture, and the halo with a cross and inscription. Although Christ didn't dress like an ancient Greek, the Church chose to depict him in this manner of the ancient philosophers to show the idolaters and philosophers that he is the true wisdom. Likewise, the prophets, apostles, and evangelists wear the same garments, indicating that they received their wisdom from the true wisdom. Christ also wears a halo. The halo originates from Persian art, where it was used to distinguish an important person or deity. The Romans adopted the use of the halo along with the worship of the emperor. It was from the Romans that Christianity adopted it, using it to distinguish important persons, in particular Christ and the saints. There's nothing scandalous about using elements from so-called pagan art. They were part of the common visual code of the time that everyone understood. Just as the Church Fathers used the philosophical language of the time and imbued it with new meaning, so the Church used the visual language of the time to be understood. There are no patristic references that the halo was symbolic of the uncreated light. This is a modern interpretation that appeared in the 20th century. Christ wears the halo with a cross with the inscription or on, the being, to distinguish him from every other saint, and to signify that he is God, and that through the cross he has destroyed death by his resurrection. So these are the fixed elements of the icon of Christ, his form, and the peripheral conventional elements that are added to the form. The task of the iconographer is to transfer the form icon and the peripheral elements into material using artistic means. These artistic means are what are variable, which is why throughout the history of Byzantine iconography we see such a variety of styles and different manners of building up colour, etc., from one period of school to another. According to the theology of the Seventh Ecumenical Council, it is the form icon that belongs to the Church. The art belongs to the painter. This is why the Church never made any definitions or canons about the style of icons, but the Byzantine system developed as the most suitable for expressing the theology and purpose of the icon. That is to bring the persons depicted off the painting surface and into the same time and space as the viewer, bringing them into a relationship, and visually expressing what we experience in the Divine Liturgy. This stylistic variability allows the iconography a degree of freedom when depicting the peripheral fixed elements of the icon. If we look at the garments of Christ, for example, in different icons, we will see that although he's wearing the same type of garments, each iconographer has drawn those garments and the folds in a different manner. This manner is not random though, and it requires an understanding of how line and rhythm work to create the sense of flow and harmony, and also to project the icon off the surface and out towards the viewer. So with this in mind, let us see how we can dress the figure of Christ. As always, we're going to start off with our axis line on the top of the head, the bottom for the feet. I'm going to divide it into two, and then in half again over here and over here, again here and here. This is where the head is going to be, and we're going to be drawing it in a dynamic frontal pose. So we're going to draw our oval, and we're going to have it wider on this side. Our nose length down, and we have the shoulders and the neck. And as we said before, 1.5 heads makes up the width for the body, and it's going to be narrow on this side and wider on this side. And now that we're going to be drawing the garments, it's not necessary to fill in the figure with great detail. Again, 1.5 heads is our length for the arm. And have the hand in the blessing stance, and our hand again is the size of the oval. On this side, Christ is going to be holding the gospel book. So we're coming around here. This leg over here is the one that will be supporting the body. So we're going to keep it on the axis line. And we'll have this leg coming out at an angle. And because this part is slightly behind the body, it's not going to be on this line. The foot will start a bit higher up. In this tutorial, we're going to keep the garments very simple, because there's a danger when trying to get too complex with the folds to lose all sense of rhythm. And here we want to get the basic feel of drawing the garments. The garments of Christ and the apostles and prophets are made up of two separate garments, the inner tunic or chitonas and the outer mantle or himation. We'll start off by drawing the outer mantle over here. We'll create folds over here to help give a sense of volume. The mountain is also then wrapped around the waist over here. And you can see here the use of transverse lines which help create a sense of rhythm. And notice how here we create a movement in this direction, whereas here there's a movement in this direction. It creates a sense of harmony and flow, and also creates a transverse relationship. Same thing happens here, and here, here, and here. We'll follow the outline of the leg. Here we have the knee. And we want to give the sense that this leg has volume. So we use our broken lines like this. We're going to give a sense of hanging folds over here. And then we'll have the chitona sticking out from underneath. Now the martin can also come around like this, over this shoulder. And as I said before, the importance of knowing where our arm is before we clothe it, so that we don't have the elbow come in the wrong place. And the chitonas underneath over here. And you can see these lines form a transverse relationship. I have the gospel book over here. And as you mentioned when drawing the feet, when composing Byzantine icons, everything that is further away in the distance is placed above what is in front. So here we have the back of the book is actually higher than the front. This is so that everything is visible to the viewer. Feet. You have to bear with me because I'm doing this at a very strange angle. Finally, we have the halo, which in this case I'm just going to draw freehand, because if I try to draw with a compass I will be drawing in front of the camera. So I'm just drawing it roughly freehand. Description or on. And the description of Christ's name, the abbreviation, Jesus Christos. And here we have the basic garments worn by Christ, the apostles and prophets. If you study the works of the masters, some of which will be provided in the PDF resource, you will see that there are countless ways to render them. Start off simply, keeping in mind how we use transverse lines to create rhythm, flow and volume. Observe and study the works particularly of Pancellinus and Theophanes of Crete to see how they used these elements and all the different ways that they rendered these garments. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Till next time, keep drawing.